says, get that India. Big boy.
Call an ambulance! Maybe call a police! Oh, what a shot! What a shot! Campbell killer!
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Tip Sheet Podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020. Joining me the preview, I believe, round 16 of the NRL New South Wales Cup and Jersey Flegg is my good mate Sixties, going back to back to back. I know that in terms of the actual release of the podcast, they've been staggered across a few days, but in terms of recording, it's been the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday triple header, mate.
This is what happens with these 5-day turnarounds. We've got truthfully, 4 podcasts that we're squeezing in because we'll have a match day instant reaction podcast at Parramatta Leagues Club this Saturday. And just to repeat, kicking off about half hour after full time up in Jack's Bar and Grill. So do come up, say g'day, have a feed and something to drink and a bit of footy talk in the background with us. And as I always say, we appreciate people coming up and saying g'day and introducing themselves. So if you're one of our listeners and you're in there in Jack's Bar and Grill and you haven't said g'day to us yet, please come up and say hello. We always enjoy meeting new people.
Well said, mate. And before we get into the previews for the 3 games on the weekend, quick shout out to the sponsors of the Tip Sheet, Big Swing Golf, Northmead, and Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, helping each episode get out to you guys. Let's get into it, mate. Starting with the Jersey Flegg, where the Eels enter the round, if I've got this correct, in 8th spot, still clinging to a top 8 spot there, taking on the bottom place, so the 12th place Manly Seagulls. Manly have just 4 wins from 13 starts. Eels not that much better, by the way. 5 wins from their 13 games. They're in a real funk right now. Getting into the team list, though, a couple of changes for the Eels, a couple of big ins. Start at fullback, you got Ethan Martin, new boy up from Redcliffe, who has got a couple of caps now. On the flanks, it's Matthew Komalafe and Richard Penasini. In the centres, Terrell Williams and Lachlan Blackburn, Te Horonui Apanui Twaddle, or Apa Twaddle, is at 5'8". Joshua Lynn is back, so I'm not sure if that was an injury or a suspension, 60s, but he's back after a game out. Nice in there. Another nice in is Noah Reid in the front row, who partners big Lance Fualima. Paddy Spence gets his first start in the Jersey Flegg after playing off the bench for a couple of weeks. He'll be the lone dummy half, it looks like, unless Damian Nati might be using that role. In the back row, you've got Charlie Guyman making his 2023 Flegg debut. He did play there last year. You mentioned in the news podcast 60s that he's finally got a clean bill of health after that SG Ball Grand Final. He'll be on the edges with William Latu on the other side. Saxon Pryke locks the forward pack. On the interchange, already mentioned him, but Damian Nati is a utility. Sam Tuivasa, Brock Parker, another big in. I'm expecting Brock to move up to the cup pretty quickly if he gets a clean bill of health after this game, 60s. And Larry Moanga Tutia rounding out the 17. Mac Pofisi is the 18th man. Taking on this Manly team, they've got a Hopewadi. There is, who else? There's a Metcalf. There's Kylan Mafoa. That's a former Parramatta prospect right there. I think that's about it off the top of my head. But yeah, both teams not doing too flash. The Eels haven't been that far off the pace, honestly, 60s. But they just need to pull it all together now.
Yeah, it's interesting because they've gone through this period where I guess they've also come up against some teams that have been in reasonable form, and the Eels have probably shot themselves in the foot in a couple of games.
Definitely.
No doubt about that. There's
the Melbourne Storm game, for sure.
Oh, the Melbourne Storm game, that was... Yeah, I'd rather not think back to that one because, yeah, it was... Look, it was a game of 2 halves. Parramatta had it completed better in the first half. They wouldn't have been in the position where the Storm were able to get a late win with a try with about a couple of minutes to go that sealed the win for them, or actually stole the win for them. And look, there's still significant outs. We don't know whether Ethan Sanders when he returns is going to go into the Jersey Flegg or whether he's going to go straight up into the New South Wales Cup. We got Buds Arthur, who will come back into the team now, whether he goes into a starting position or comes off the bench, but he'll be back in the next match. And I'm expecting Ethan Sanders to be very close to being the next match. We're still about a month or so away from seeing Blaze Talangi return to the field. So, it's really that point where Coach Craig Brennan is trying to get that right blend of the SG ball players that have been elevated into the squad. And we're now in that situation where we've got 8 that are in the team this week. 8 of the 17 are from the SG ball team. And when you consider that there's 2 players in Ethan Sanders and Matty Arthur who have already played in the team, that's 10 of the players. Now, am I missing anyone else that's had a run that's not named at the moment that was playing in the SG ball team?
I have to have a quick gander because off the top of my head, I think you're pretty close to spot on. We haven't seen, so Devonto Vivella and Muhammad Al-Madine haven't come up. Dom Destratus hasn't come up yet. Seb Piacula, Will Lewis, Raf Destratus, Kobe Herford, none of them have come up. So I think you're about spot on.
Yeah, so if we're talking 10 players at the moment from that SG ball team who have been getting a run now in the Jersey Flegg team and potentially 10 all 10. It may not happen, but I guess it is potentially all 10 could be running around in the team next week. But I think it's more likely that you're going to see Ethan Sanders maybe selected in New South Wales Cup. Or if he was to come back into Jersey Flegg, maybe it'd be a scenario where it'd be a choice between he and Josh Lynn about who's playing at the halfback role, and maybe Arpa would return to the fullback role. I'm not too sure, but anyway, we're seeing that transition of youth. Like we're talking about like really young players coming into the graded ranks, because we're not just talking about 19-year-olds in there, but we're also talking about 18-year-olds in that team who were, first year in the SG ball this season and then going straight into the Jersey Flegg team. How will they perform this week against Manly? Well, they're similarly performing teams, aren't they?
Yep.
And I guess that unknown is in this grade is really the completion rates on a given week. Now, that's probably the case no matter what level of football that you're playing, but where we've seen these matches where the Eels have not been able to get the win, it's very much come back to those errors that have just taken away all momentum or prevented them from finishing off a good flow of play that seemed to be leading to points. So obviously the Coach Brennan will be looking for them to get to their kick through the game. I mean, I think we mentioned the other night that when we were talking to Steve O'Day, who was the coach of the successful SG ball team, he spoke to us about how the form came together in the latter half of the season really, really strongly. But basically it was because they were getting to those kicks where we were seeing Ethan Sanders' kicking game coming to the fore. And although they haven't got Ethan Sanders out there in this weekend, you still want to see them get to the kicking game, play then a bit of territory where you're not getting cheap possession, you're giving away cheap possession or territory to the opposition, and really work into the game. And it's basic rugby league, but what you tend to see in the lower grades is a lot of errors. They just don't, even more so than what you see in NRL, and that's for obvious reasons. It's a different standard player, different experience, but it's probably when you watch the Jersey Flegg football, it's probably the most frustrating part is, you go, complete the set, get to the kick, get to the kick.
Yep.
So, so look, mate, I'd like to think we're going to get a bounce back this week.
Unfortunately, we won't be on site to witness it, mate. It clashes with the New South Wales
me.
Cup, 3 o'clock p.m, New Era Stadium, Eels hosting the Sea Eagles, which, of course, is smack bang in disharmony with the New South Wales Cup game, which is 3 o'clock p.m, Combank Stadium. So very frustrating.
Exact same starting times.
Yeah.
Exact same starting times. Now, why? I mean, it must be a stadium decision as well that they're not going to host 3 games on the same day. It's a pity that we couldn't have all 3 grades playing at Combank Stadium. So we're going to have to be looking for the score updates coming through whilst we're watching New South Wales Cup out at Combank Stadium this week.
And let's move on to the New South Wales Cup 60s, where the 10th placed Eels, they're struggling a bit here, take on the 6th placed, let me get this right, Blacktown Workers Sea Eagles, where Eels obviously hosting the game at Combank Stadium. We mentioned 3 o'clock p.m. kickoff. Couple of changes here for the Eels, one of a real question mark in terms of who, and then a big name in. But we'll start at fullback, Zach Sini. He retains his spot in the one. I don't think it was particularly great last week at the fullback spot, but it's not his natural position. But he's got Hayes Dunster and Chris Tupou on the flanks. Wonga Blake, 60s. He's finally back after, I believe he broke his collarbone or something around that part when he made his when he got dropped back to Cup the first week. But he's now back with Isaac Lumilumi also in the centres. Dan Keir, we spoke about it in the news podcast yesterday, but he's going to be in the halves with Jordan Rankin. Like I said, he's going to do everything he can. He'll be wholehearted about it, but the big man, hopefully he can surprise me because I don't think he's a 5'8". In the front row, Jonte Jr. and Bethan Meeser. Good to see the hyphen really locking in this position now. He's had a pretty good year despite the team struggles. He'll be in the front row of Kai Rodwell. Manny Luke is a dummy half. In the back row, Jack Murchie. Jeremiah Masia, who bounces around the team, ends up on the edges this week. Tony Mattiello, it looks like they're moving him into the middle, properly now 60s. That's a couple of weeks now where he's been at lock, either interchange or starting. So good to see if he can make that transition. On the interchange, speaking of debutants, Jacob Davis. He was 18th man against the Newcastle Knights, I believe, a couple of weeks ago, but now he gets his first look at Cup. We've got another new face in Robbie Graham. Got nothing on him, mate. I think he might be from the Wenty feeder team, though. Jock Brazel continues to get a look in New South Wales Cup. Good to see. And Nico Apello rounds out the team. Looking at the Sea Eagles, or the Blacktown Worker Sea Eagles, there's Clayton Falolo. That's a former Eel from way back. There's Latu Fainu, one of the Fainu boys. Joey Tramontana, Austin Diaz, Denzel Tanisi, Vaya Tapatautai, Brad Abbey's bounced around again. He's on Neil, but he's a former L player, and Ollie Clements. So a fair few ex-Eels there as I want to see in this Blacktown Workers Sea Eagles outfit. But yeah, the Eels, can they bounce back this week, mate? Because they were humiliated. Like there's no other way of putting it against the Bulldogs last week.
Look, what's your honest expectations?
Pretty low for this game. I don't think Manly's got a great team on paper, but I dare say confidence is pretty low for our boys after what's happened the last couple of weeks. In particular, that Bulldogs game, the back line is obviously better with Wonga in it, but you've still only got Wonga and Hayes as legit NRL guys, across the 1 to 5. Dan Keir, like I said, this isn't a knock on him. He's been a real full-blooded, wholehearted player for us, but he's not a 5'8". And we got Manny Luke and a rookie at dummy half and Jacob Davis. I'm keen to see how Davis goes. But if we're going to win, it feels like you're going to have a couple of forwards really dominate through the middle and then maybe give Wonga Blake some early ball to try and make a few moves, because I don't think we've got much else cooking in the team right now.
Yeah, Robbie Graham's a back rower for Wenty, been playing Ron Massey Cup. So that sort of fits in with Nika Apelu and also out on the wing, Chris Tupou. We've had other players from the Wenty Ron Massey Cup team filling in for the Eels in New South Wales Cup this year. So we've got that association still with Wenty. I think there's an association also with Parramatta where we've had Jersey Flegg players who aren't required turn out for Parramatta. I know for certain that we had Larry Mwanga Tutia playing for Parramatta earlier this year when he wasn't required. So, look, I guess there's a little bit more in the way of players in position this week, in that we've got Wonga Blake in the centres. We haven't got a forward running around in the centres. We have, look, I don't know how much experience Isaac Lumi had playing in the centres prior to his stint with the Eels. I've always regarded him as a winger. I don't know whether back to his days in prior to joining the Melbourne Storm, whether he played much in centre coming through the grades. But like you're playing a back. If we're playing a back rower in the halves as one of the playmakers, it lets you know that our stocks are very, very limited at the club right now. Yes, we've got players that are returning from injury, but even if we had no players out with injury, by my reckoning, we've got 27 players of the 30 in the that are currently playing with the Eels that are on an NRL contract. So I maintain that we've got 2 spots open, and we've got a contracted player that we're not using in Mitch Rain. I don't think he's out injured.
No,
I could be wrong.
Maybe he is, but either way, he's not available.
Well, he hasn't appeared in any of the injury reports. I haven't seen him running around at training for some time. So I'm just assuming that they've parted ways early with Mitch, and that he's probably he might remain on the contracted list for the rest of this season due to contractual status, all those sorts of things, that he's make sure he gets paid out and all. But yeah, I mean, he's there. If I'm sure if there was a long-term injury, that it would have appeared on the Eels injury list, given that he is
top 30 contracted, a
contracted player in the top 30, and we've now seen that like even Samuel Luizio, who's mostly been playing Jersey Flegg, because he's injured and he's top contracted to the top 30. He was listed on the injury report this week.
Mm-hmm.
So look, I'm more confident that they will perform, put up a better performance against the Sea Eagles than they would against the Bulldogs. I know that the Sea Eagles have climbed the ladder, and they're playing some reasonable football, that has to be said, in doing so. But if I think back to the start of the year, it was quite a tight match. Like, the Eels had to come back to beat the Sea Eagles up at Blacktown, up at the Workers Club. Decent game of football, late fight back from the Eels, but Jake Arthur had a lot to do with that comeback as well. So not sure what to make of the options there. You mentioned the number of players that have got a link with the Eels. Can they do it? Who knows?
Like I said, confidence is shot right now. They've had a string of tough results that culminated in that absolute massacre at the hands of the Bulldogs. They have to dig deep this week.
Really, really dig deep. Obviously they've got to start so much better. What were they down 22 points after 15 minutes last week?
Yeah.
The Bulldogs scored on their first set from memory.
Yeah, they scored on the first couple of sets, I'm pretty certain. It wasn't great. We didn't touch the ball until like 12 minutes, it felt like. Yeah.
And you know what? I've seen similar from them during this season, where they just concede that string of tries, and then you think, they come out of it and they seem to fight back a bit, and then you get another sequence of tries.
Exactly how it went.
It's been that when they've lost matches, it's been in a big way. So they're either going to win on the back of big effort plays, or we're going to get towed up again. I guess what they can look forward to is that in a week or two, the stock should be bolstered, a little bit, because we're going to have more players available for the NRL. And as we talked about the other night, that will mean that there's selection headaches for BA about who he leaves out of the first grade team, which then means that the New South Wales Cup squad are the beneficiaries. And goodness knows they need to be the beneficiaries.
Hopefully they'll be beneficiaries on both sides of the pipeline. The NRL guys coming back down, and then the best of the Flegg guys coming up. So that would be ideal. True.
Yeah. So, mate, before we move on to the NRL, is there a world where you're tipping an Eels win in the New South Wales Cup?
Look, it's not like Manly are a good team, so there's absolutely a reason to think they can get it done. But, yeah, just if they're going to get it done, it feels like it's going to be a real, roll up your sleeves, ugly, gritty win. So I think they're capable of doing it, but that loss against the Dogs, it's hard to get over that. Sometimes you see teams bounce back from the big defeats, but sometimes it also just leads to more losses. So I don't know. I'm not feeling it right now for our boys, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it was such a shame too that they had the TV game platform in that performance against the Bulldogs, and all that simply showcased was that there's a bit of talent in the Bulldogs reserve grade team that maybe they might be doing well to hold on to.
Yeah, well, I've been impressed with young Jarrell Skelton when I've seen him a couple of times, and he's buried on that depth chart out in the back line too. So, yeah, it certainly seems like there's a few players that might be looking at options elsewhere at the end of the season.
And just before we go on to the NRL team, there's, of course, that news that Avarillo and Alamotti, that they've told them they can look around elsewhere.
Alamotti's already been linked to the Cowboys, I believe, being caught having a coffee with their recruitment team. But Avarillo is someone we're both pretty big fans of, and I wouldn't call him like an outrageous X factor, but he's certainly got a little bit of X factor to him with that ability to play multiple positions and some lightning quick speed. Well,
it's pretty hard to invent pace out of nothing. It's not like you can. It's not like it's a skill where you suddenly can. You might be a 6 out of 10 player, and then with a bit of work, you work your way up towards being an 8 or 9 out of 10 player in terms of performance. You're not going to get someone who's 6 out of 10 on the pace, as far as pace is concerned, and then is suddenly an 8 or 9 out of 10 as far as pace. You're not gonna get that. I mean, we know that sprint coaches can get a little bit more out of players, but it's not that level of exponential development in your pace that is going to make that much difference. So if any club can find players who are out of the box when it comes to pace, you've got to look seriously at them.
Yep.
It's like finding the likes of a Josh Addo-Carr,
Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow,
of Saab over at Manly, the Hammer, yeah. And what's the winger's name? Khan Pereira.
Yeah.
Up at the Titans. I mean, these blokes that have got that stand out from the crowd sort of pace. Gee, it'd be good to have some of those, at your disposal. At least one of them at your disposal. This isn't. I'm not putting a knock on Eels players in any way, shape, or form, but you could imagine some of the half breaks that we've made this season, where Hayes was struggling to keep up with the play. Imagine if you had someone like a Saab chasing through on those breaks. I mean, it's like shut the gate. Of course, there's always downsides to, unless they're an absolutely elite player. I think we can put Josh Addo-Carr comfortably in the elite class. some of those other players that we've mentioned, like Sub, they've got faults in their game, and sometimes it's around the defence. So you give with one hand, you got to take away with the other. But if you've got someone like any of those players at the end of the back line, you're probably going to score more tries than without them. So anyway, we move on to the NRL, mate.
Yes, main event, 5:30 p.m. out at CommBank Stadium. Obviously, the main event in that double header at our home ground. Also, before we get into the team list, a quick shout out because it's going to be Old Boys Day. They're celebrating the 40th anniversary of the Freepeat. So the 83, obviously completion of that 81, 82, 83, back-to-back Freepeat under Jack Gibson. With the Eels, obviously, being the last team to do that. Pretty important milestone to celebrate 60s.
It's a partial Old Boys Day. It's just a reunion for that 1983 team. I think the full Old Boys Day is early August. I think it's about the 5th of August, something like that. So this is a specific celebration of 40 years since the 83 grand final team. So any player that participated in the 1983 season is going to be acknowledged and celebrated at the game on Saturday, but it's being limited to that, so it's a partial Old Boys Day. We'll have the full Old Boys Day with the Blue and Gold Alliance early August. That'll be something you and I will probably be involved with in terms of grabbing a few chats with the players at the club. Anyway, we'll be bringing news on that as we get closer to the date.
Yes, indeed. And obviously, in two of those three premierships in the Freepeat, the Eels knocked over a certain club that was their sister club in the Inception times, Manly Warringah Seagulls, 21-8 and 18-6. Brett Kenny manned the match on both occasions. 60s, bit of a decent player right there.
He went okay.
He went all right. But we get to the Eels, and this is a very interesting team list. We'll start with the Seagulls first, but in terms of the Eels team list, I didn't realise this when I was doing Team List Tuesday, but in their actual sort of text right up for the Team 60s, they mentioned that Shaun Laune is a bit of an outside chance of returning, apparently. He's been named on the extended bench, and they've said he's a chance of returning from a hamstring injury, so that's one to watch. Have to wait and see. But for Manly, they're also a bit depleted this week with no Tom Tabojevic, no Dowie Cherry Evans. They're the only major outs. Got a few ins. We start at fullback with KO Weeks.
Hang on. Is there similar news about Aaron Woods for the Manly Seagulls? I notice he's listed there.
That would involve me having to go to manlyseagulls.com.au, and I'm not doing that, 60s. I will not sully my web browser with that. But yeah, the Manly backline from 1 to 5, Weeks at fullback. Then you got Saab, Toltau Kula, Ruben Garrick, and Christian Tuapolotu. In the halves, Josh Schuster partners Jake Arthur. Like we said in the news podcast, almost a legendary bit of cosmic humour there with Jake making his starting debut against the Eels. In the front row, Taniela Paseka, Lachlan Croker, Tafal Sifley or Toff Sipley, sorry. Back row, on the edges, Hamole Olakwadu and Samuel Afinu. Sean Kepi locks the forwards for them. On the interchange,
it's got a bit of a Western Sydney feel.
It does have a bit of a Western Sydney feel. Paseka comes from the Tigers. Toff Sipley is a Warrior, I believe, but Olakwatu, Fainu, and Kepi, they're all Western Sydney boys. So, yes, Manly definitely got a Western Sydney flavour to their forward pack. Interchange, Carl Lawton, Josh Alioi, Ethan Bullimore.
Another eel there, Josh Alioi.
Yeah, Josh Alioi, Ethan Bullimore, Ben Condon. Extended roster, you already mentioned him, but Aaron Woods, Raymond Tuamalo Vega. I think they got him from the Dragons. Then you got Morgan Harper, Gordon Chan Kum Tong, their young junior dummy half prospect, and then Zach Fulton. For the Eels now, 60s, Quentin Gufferson will captain the team from fullback. An unchanged backline again, actually. They've had a nice bit of continuity for the last few weeks, which is probably tied into some of those results. But Mike Acevo, Will Penasini, Bowie Simonson, Sean Russell, they've all been in pretty good touch. Bowie Simons in particular has been really good at left centre. In the halves, Brad Arthur went for the literal biggest answer he could have got for who's going to replace Mitchell Moses, Ryan Matterson. It just goes back to 2014 when it was a Holden Cup, or was it Holden Cup still? Toyota Cup? NYC, whichever way you want to call it. NYC 5'8" and halfback for the Eels. He's even bigger than he was back then. He's going to be in the halves with Daejarn, Arcee. Reagan Campbell-Gillard will work with Ofahengaue to start the front row. Brendan Hands will be the lone dummy half as Josh Hodgson recovers from that neck injury. In the back row, Bryce Cartwright's on the right, Andrew Davey the left. Jermaine Hopgood will be the lock forward. Luca Moretti, Joe Ofahengaue, Matt Dury and Makasi Makatoa round out a very good-looking bench, it must be said. Extended roster, Hayes Dunster, Jack Murchie, Kai Rodwell, Wonga Blake, Shaun Laune. Chris Butler is the man with the whistle. Chris Sutton and Casey Badger are running the sidelines. Adam G is the video official. All right, 60s, talk to me. Do you like that team? Do you what do you see looking at Manly's team? What do we got cooking in this game on Saturday?
You actually threw me with that news about Shaun Laune.
Yeah, I did not see it on Team List Tuesday, and I just went back to have a look at the Team List now to have them all ready, and they have that in the write-up saying that he's a chance of playing. So I don't know if that's some real, big brain mind game stuff from our media team, or if he is legitimately a chance. Because if he is, that's a pretty huge in.
Yeah, well, he's got the longest hamstrings probably in the world. So he would have been going through quite a lot of rehab when we're considering those the size of the hamstrings. But he didn't look too bad at training last week, so it's not necessarily a surprise. I know he's been busting a gut to get back out on the field. I've heard rumours around the club that he makes an absolute pest of himself when he's not playing. So both he and Reg are guilty of that. Now the staff have managed to get Reg back out on the field, so his level of painfulness has been diminished. The next step, obviously, was to get Lane back out there, and it's not outside the realms of possibility. They haven't trained as yet this week, as far as I'm aware, and that's to be expected because they only played 2 days ago.
Yeah, they're probably just going to have the one session, probably.
So it will probably be one session this week. So. I guess all will be revealed either on the training track or in the day before the match or the match day itself. But yeah, so as I said, you caught me a little bit unawares with that. Look, when it comes to the teams, you do have both teams that are missing key players due to Origin and also some injury as well. I'm looking at them, and I guess they match up reasonably well across the backs. Have the Seagulls got the edge in the halves? Maybe because Jake Arthur's probably got a little bit more experience at the 7.
He's a proper out-and-out 7, and Josh Schuster is their first-choice marquee young star. So, in terms of who's available, they've certainly got the better running of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I've always been a fan of these young forwards that are coming through with the Seagulls, but I don't want to underestimate what our own pack can do, even with key players out. There's a real strength in what we've been delivering through the middle, especially in probably the last month to 6 weeks in the competition. Even allowing for the injuries that we've had, the next player up has been getting the job done. You can't really point a finger at anyone who's been called up to the NRL in the forwards and say, "Nah, they shouldn't have got their shot. Nah, they didn't deliver. They weren't good enough. BA can't rely on them." Like, they've all basically done their job. All these players that have been called up in the last 6 weeks, maybe last 8 weeks. So if they perform the way they did once they got that hot potato stuff out of their system from the early part of last week, once they got back into para footy, into trusting all the processes that they know work, they were far too good for the Bulldogs.
Mm-hmm.
You'd like to think they're going to be far too good for the Seagulls. We can't afford a scenario that we had last time against the Seagulls where we gave them cheap points.
Yeah. Constant turnovers in our own half, paving the way for them to just have free shots at our goal line. And, we weren't quite in sync defensively at that point of the season. And it's no surprise that they piled on the points. And we did make a big rally and have a, damn near make the comeback. But we haven't got Mitchell Moses. We haven't got Dylan Brown. We haven't got the guys that can engineer big comebacks right now. So you got to, you got to play this game close. And, well, you don't have to play it close in terms of, keeping their points in check. That's important. We can run away for this game, and I'm not going to be worried. That's fine. We can pile on the points if we want. Sure, go do that. But yeah, we can't spot Manly 2 or 3 tries early in this game.
No, it doesn't hurt at all that Manly's got the players out that are out. I'm not going to. I can't shy away from that. DCE, he's been when the Sea Eagles have performed well this season, he's been a big part of that, and I guess he's become their leader that he should have always been. I think there's probably been seasons in the past where there's been question marks raised about him, but when it comes down to it, you're talking about a bloke who's a Queensland Origin regular. He's played for Australia. He's won plenty of games for the Seagulls where he's carried them on his back. He seems to have some good games against the Eels. I mean, likewise, I look at their lineup and I think, Reuben Garrick always seems to play well when we play against the Seagulls. Josh Schuster, across any season, he's been as inconsistent as you get, but he finds the right sort of form when he's played us. He certainly did at the start of the year. He pulled out those like that chip and chase try that he produced. He pulled that out of his ass, didn't he? I mean, it was like, and I think am I correct in saying that after the Seagulls beat us, that he was out of the team immediately after that?
Didn't he get put in the fat camp? I'm pretty certain.
Yeah, I think it was almost straight after that. Lachlan Croker, I've actually got a lot of time for as a dummy half. I think he's vastly underrated.
Yeah, he actually goes pretty good.
Yeah, so and you've just got that mix of raw skill and athleticism with their forwards. They don't mind throwing out an offload. They've got all of their forwards have got reasonable mobility and a bit of pace in them too. So I think they're a little bit. Could I say they've got points of difference about them? I don't know. I mean, there's elements where it feels like this player and this player and this player in their team all play very similarly, but I don't know that I'd make comparisons between them and the players that are in the Eels team. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Accordingly, I think those Manly forwards have errors in them. And I'm not sure what level of resilience they have in them either, because they're not really what I'd call seasoned players. So I think, again, if the Eels stick to para footy, if they can be better, and I keep harping on about it, but we need completions. I don't want to be relying on a kick from deep in our own half. So when I say completions, I mean good completions. I don't mean where we're struggling, not just from the point of view of turning over cheap ball, but I'm talking about, getting a good solid set, getting up towards halfway if we're cutting it off our line, so that we've got a kick coming from at least from around the middle of the field, not from 30 metres out from our line. When you've got a Mitch Moses in your team,
you can smash
be having
it 60
kicks
metres.
you can be kicking from your own 30-metre line. You're still going to get it into their quarter. You're not going to get that with the players that we've got there in the halves this week. You're not going to get Moses or Arcee kicking the ball for 60 odd metres. So, but again, I think if we trust our process, if we just play good para footy without even overplaying our hands in any way, shape, or form, I think you can frustrate the Sea Eagles, this particular Sea Eagles lineup out of the game, because they haven't got Tommy Turbo, they haven't got Daly Cherry Evans, and although I've got such a strong regard for Jake Arthur and the fact that he will keep a steady ship, I'm not too sure about the rest of their lineup.
Yep. I think that's a pretty fair summation. Manly, a potentially explosive attacking roster, but also vulnerable to good football being played against them. No DCE to calm them down. No Tom Trbojevic to maximise some of their opportunities. So they're very beatable. Obviously, they can still put on the points against us, and that's why keeping them in check is going to be huge in this game. And like you said, controlling field position is going to be critical to Matterson and RC and Hands and Gufferson, because I think it's going to take all four combining to be the guys helping win field position and territory. But yeah, getting the ball to the right position at the end of sets will be critical. So we're not getting dominated in field position. But in saying that, the forward pack 60s, Reg, Ogden, you got Moretti, Ofahengaue, and Makatoa, Hopgood. That's a pretty handy set of forwards. No Junior, no Lane potentially. I mean, if Lane's in, then I suppose Davey gets bumped from the starting team, and then maybe he goes to the bench and Moretti drops out. But that'd be tough on Luca. Luca's been pretty good in his last 3 games, or 2 games, sorry.
Yeah, it would be. And you look at that pack and you go, our unsung players, Ofahengaue Ogden, who could criticise the carries that he's been making in the last few weeks, whenever he's been called up, as a matter of fact. Bryce Cartwright's playing the most consistent football of his career.
Mm-hmm.
And the try that he basically created out of nothing for Will Penasini last week, that was, that wasn't even what you'd call old Bryce Cartwright. It was because it was just damn good rugby league. Like he sold the dummy, got around the outside of the player down and got down the wing, and then got the pass back on the inside to Will Penasini. There was real footballing instinct about it, but it was like he didn't really overplay it, if that makes sense. Like he didn't have to do anything freakish or extraordinary in creating a try out of nothing. He created a try out of nothing, out of simply really good rugby league instincts and execution. So he's been quite the revelation this year. And then when you're talking about the bench, and again another unsung player, Makahesi Makatoa, I thought he was really good last week.
Mm-hmm.
His meters were excellent. He brought energy when he came onto the field. I guess the unknown for us in our pack is Joe Ofahengaue, because we know that he's a quality footballer, but we've only seen a couple of minutes of him in Parramatta gear. So I guess we wait with bated breath to see what he's able to produce this week. Look, if Shaun Laune isn't 100% or really, really close to 100%, I hope we don't.
Don't rush him back, exactly.
So I'm gonna temper any of those thoughts about him playing this week, because there's part of me that doesn't want him to rush back a week early. I think we can beat Manly without needing to include him in the team this week. So, mate, I think we're probably ready to
predict.
Yes, most definitely. So, what's your thoughts on the scoreline?
We've been. I know Mitchell Moses has been part of the team, obviously, so that's a big qualifying factor. But we've been on a bit of a roll in our last 3 wins. Well, we were plus 22 against the Bulldogs, plus 8 against the Cowboys, but that was probably a closer finish than sort of our control of the game deserve to sort of warrant. Plus 20 against the Rabbitohs. Maybe we'll hit double digits against Manly if we get the win here. So I don't know. Maybe or maybe not. Maybe it'll be a scrappy game. Maybe like 20-12 or something like that.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go for. I think we're going to head towards 40 total match points, maybe a little bit above. I think the Eels 28-14 winners there.
We're averaging about 25 points a game. We've got the best per game offense right now in the NRL. I think the Sharks have Rabbitohs. One of those teams has more points than us, but they've played an extra game, and we're just behind them. So our per game average is very good. So playing around that number is not a bad idea, even without Moses.
And just as an aside, are you putting that down to the influence of Trent Barrett?
Yeah, I think it took us a little bit. I mean, I say a little bit of time. We're still posting points in the early weeks, but there is now a fluency, I think, in our attack that's pretty crisp, and I think Trent's doing a very good job there.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting because you've got two coaches there who are focusing on attack. You've got Murph and you've got Trent Barrett, and I think from memory, we had Murph doing might have been looking at transitions between structured and unstructured play. And Trent Barrett, was he looking after the unstructured or the structured? He's definitely looking at structured play during the preseason, and I know that what they were looking at as well was being as up tempo as possible when opportunities were presenting, and there was a little bit of unstructured opportunities there to attack. So, look, I think Baz and Murph have combined really well with sorting out the Eels' attack there, and it's interesting to see where they've come from in the pre-season and some of the things that they were working on in that regard, and how it's now manifesting in the Eels' performance. It was, you're probably going to find that there's supporters out there who are highly critical of the Eels' attack without realising that the Eels have scored more points per game than any other team.
Yeah, they're doing it very well right now. So, and probably I suppose the cool thing is that we haven't seen them fully unlock everything yet.
No, we know that there's been games there where they've left points out there on the field, and it's been costly in some games as well. So there's no smugness, I don't think, about our thoughts on the Eels' attack. In us saying no, they're going better than what you think in terms of the attack. Yes, they are, but there's still plenty that they can work on there. So yeah, I'm thinking it's going to be something like 28-14, something like that, to the Eels. Mate, your first try scorer.
FTS. I mean, I know that Guffo's still in the team, so it's kind of hard to go past Micah Sevo. I think, just RC being that left edge half, playing down that side, finding Guffo on the sweep to find Sevo. I think Mike is the common sense pick here.
Yeah. I'm almost swayed by Gutho's form last week. No, I am swayed. I'll tip Gutho as first try scorer. He's looked likely in many games this year to be first try scorer. He executed those plays so well at the start of the game last week. Was he the first 3 tries or the first 2? I know he got his hat trick.
He got his hattie in 24 minutes, and that was first 3. Yeah, Bowie, Will, and Micah followed. Yeah,
so I'll back him to follow it up with first try scorer this week. And best on field, mate.
Best on field. I mean, it's kind of hard to ignore the King. He was so good last week, and you think he'll be stepping up this week. And you just know in games like this, he's going to make a couple of defensive plays that'll probably save the day. So I'll keep it simple. Clinton Gufferson.
I'm going to go for Reg in this one. I think the big man's going to have a really big say in what happens through the middle. winning through the middle is going to be how the Eels win this match. So, yeah, it's Reg for me for best on field. So, and I think we've basically covered all we need to for this week. Again, another thank you to our sponsors, Big Swing Golf at Northmead and Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. And, of course, I have to give another reminder that the home of the Eels, Parramatta Leagues Club, is the place where you will find us after the game this week as we present our instant reaction podcast live in Jack's Bar and Grill. Come up, have a drink, have a feed, listen to some footy talk. It's the place to be after the game. The club is doing a great job of, I guess, bringing that home match feel around the place. It is the home of the Eels. They're living it as the home of the Eels now. So get there on Saturday after the match. Come and say good day to us. Mate, any final words from you about the game?
No, I'm feeling it this week. I'm really looking forward to the NRL game, and hopefully the Flegg and Cup can turn their tough runs around in recent weeks. But the NRL team, I think we're cooking. And even without Mitchell Moses and Junior Barlow, I think we're going to have a really good showing on the weekend.
Well, let's keep it cooking and go you mighty Eels.